Good evening. This is Front Page by AIM Network. For almost a decade, India's startup story was easy to describe. Apps, fintech, SaaS, services, great interfaces, big gross merchandise value numbers, and very often, even bigger losses. But 2026 feels different. For the first time, India's deep tech ambition has a delivery date, not just a vision deck. Because suddenly, a lot of long term bets are converging and they're converging fast. The union government has cleared a 1 lakh crore rupees research development and innovation fund. This isn't for consumer apps, it's for high risk, hard science, semiconductors, quantum, advanced manufacturing, energy, biotech. At the same time, private capital is stepping in where India has historically struggled, the valley between lab success and real world scale. VCs like Speciale Invest is raising 1400 crore rupees growth fund too, designed specifically to help deep tech startups survive that brutal jump from prototype to production. Global capital is following. Nvidia, Qualcomm Ventures, and a coalition of US India VCs have committed $1.85 billion plus through the India Deep Tech Alliance. And foreign investors are no longer just testing the waters. DSA Holding and NGS have signed a $2 billion letter of intent with Inauguris to build quantum AI robotics parks and green energy backed data centers in India. Even academia is changing gears. IIT Bombay's SINE incubator has launched a 250 crore Y Point Deep Tech VC fund explicitly designed to take ideas out of the lab and into the market. And then there is JioGenNext. What started as a mentorship platform has quietly become one of India's most powerful deep tech engines, offering enterprise validation inside Reliance itself. Robotics, industrial AI, cybersecurity, energy intelligence, and grid scale automation. We, of course, broke this and this particular shift earlier on Front Page. And of course, in a recent Front Page conversation, Tracxn co founder Neha Singh put it very simply. She ended up saying India's startup curve is moving away from quick SaaS wins towards deep tech confidence, where capital, founder maturity, enterprise demand, and national AI investments are finally lining up. Big tech sees it too. Amazon has committed $35 billion by 2030. Microsoft, as we know, $17.5 billion by 2029. Google, of course, and is building a $15 billion AI hub in Vizag. So, all stories we've tracked are closely something that we have been trying to go ahead and focus on. And this is what it brings us to. It adds up to the fact that Jio and Airtel bundling Gemini Pro, Perplexity Pro, and AI assistants directly into data plans. So the message finally emerges and it is unmistakable. India isn't just consuming technology anymore. It's being prepared to build it and operate it at scale. We, of course, recently reported that India ranked third globally in tech funding in 2025 at $10.5 billion, ahead of China, alongside record IPOs and more disciplined capital. So, tonight, the question sharpens. Will 2026 be the year India finally cracks deep tech at scale, or will this become another chapter of big policy intent without shop floor outcomes? Because when you strip it all down, this moment will be decided on three fault lines. The first one being capital. Is patient growth stage money truly available or still selective and cautious? Second, compute and infrastructure. Will fabs, quantum parks, and data centers arrive on time? And the third one, commercialization. So, can India move from impressive PDFs to products that actually run inside factories, warehouses, grids, and defense systems? Joining us for this discussion is Sanjana Gupta, our very astute tech journalist who will help you and I to understand this a lot better. Welcome to Front Page, Sanjana. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Sudhi. I'm doing great and great to be here again. And
Fabulous.
yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully well, now doing better that you and I are all warmed up for this particular discussion. So let's get right into it. First one
Definitely.
being, Sanjana, is India finally funding deep tech at the right layer, or are we still overfunding ideas and underfunding execution?
I feel before we talk about India, we have to sort of understand a global context, around this entire deep tech ecosystem.
Fair enough.
And maybe let me begin with a bit on more of a legacy player. And
Hmm.
let's start with the US. Looking at the United States, they've been a player in the deep tech over the past 5 decades. And, this begins with the right hallmark, incident being the Apollo mission and the race with the
Hmm.
Soviet Union that began, back in the 20th, mid 20th century, you can say. So that's where the US began as a legacy player. You can say an old guard, to an essence,
Sure.
for deep tech, and I feel following closely with them is China.
Hmm.
They began somewhere around, 2014, 15, into the deep tech segment and launched policies like Made in China 2025, which refers to the policy name. And
Hmm.
they, I would say, are in an essence gaining a good momentum when looking at the deep tech industry. But of course, now we look at India.
Fair.
India, I would say, in a sense, has been quite nascent. We began only a few years ago. But in that sense, we've been catching up, I would say, but in essentially, that catch up is happening quite slow. I mean, clearly because we've just began. But I
Are
feel
we
we
on
have
the
a
right
long way to
path
go.
though? That's fine. But are we on the right
Mhm.
path, Sanjana?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are focusing on the, biggest, deeper technologies that the world is competing in. We are looking
Hmm.
at quantum, we are looking at, AI, we are looking at foundational models, we are looking at space technologies,
Quantum, of course, as
robotics,
a moment
and
of celebration, Sanjana, only yesterday, Amravati was given the nod by the central government
yes,
to become the capital. And of
definitely.
course, uh, uh,
And definitely, I mean,
Chandrababu Naidu
hopefully
ji went ahead
someday,
and, yeah, it was very, very encouraging. Anyway,
yes,
yeah, you
and
were saying.
someday, hopefully, we do have a Nobel Prize winner out of Andhra Pradesh. And, as the
Yes,
government announced, they would be giving out a 100
sure,
crore prize for that.
sure.
So that's something definitely very exciting to look forward to, to look at
Hmm.
how the government is progressing this sector as well as the, entire VC ecosystem when we look at it. But I feel in terms of the venture capitalists, there's still a
Hmm.
lot more to go on.
Which brings me to this point. What actually decides success now? Is it more capital, since you just mentioned that, Sanjana? Is it faster infrastructure or better early customers willing to deploy risky technology?
I feel capital is definitely something to look into. It matters, and it's something that drives every startup and the economy when you look at it as a whole, right? And capital is something that in India, when we look at the VCs, they've been very used to, the long gestation periods, sorry, the shorter
Hmm.
gestation periods,
Hmm.
and looking at sort of startups or technologies that are giving faster and easier returns. But when we look at deep tech, it's a technology that is a very long term game, and that's
Hmm.
not something that's going to give faster returns. And definitely that comes into a big play when we look at VCs investing in deep tech. But
Also, wanted to just very
mhm,
quickly ask you something before you go on to the next aspect is, Sanjana, that you
right.
mentioned that they are more comfortable in investing in short-term investment, for example,
Mhm.
in comparison to, let's say, the way longer gestation period. Is that also because, do they also feel that they are more comfortable in doing it with people who have been, like you mentioned, the United States, which are legacy players, or for that matter, China, etc., because they feel, okay, at least that's a much safer ecosystem, we are just starting up.
See, I feel at the end of the day, the funding is for progress of technology, right? And when we look at, let's say, legacy players like US, they've been in the game for a long time. So definitely collaborating with them for funding or for any kind of technology transfer definitely does have its perks. But after saying that, I would also say that India is not falling behind. in that sense. There's been a lot of VCs that are coming up that are recognizing themselves as core deep tech VCs. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I feel when we look at these, deep tech VCs, as they call them, uh, we also need to look at them hoping to broaden their portfolio at with deeper technologies, because a lot of VCs I come across are deep tech VCs, but they would be, let's say, focusing on alternatives to plastic. And definitely, as much as material science is something that's of a deeper tech gay, but like quantum space tech, something that even like the government is progressing, or something that needs to be
Mm.
looked into as a countrywide interest, is also something I feel we should delve into. So definitely capital is something. But the second thing you mentioned in terms of infrastructure, that is also very important. But I feel infrastructure also comes and grows with need. So when I say with need,
Fair
I
point.
mean, let's pick up Karnataka, for example. The state has been actively pushing its, Beyond Bengaluru initiative,
Yeah,
going into lots and lots of cities like Mysore, Mangalore, Dharwad.
sure.
And that is something, infrastructure in those places will grow as and when you actually make
When the
sure that
need arises,
technologies, yeah,
right?
but the need has to arise, is the point.
Mm.
That, like, when we
Sure.
talk about building technologies there, the technologies have to build there. So that is something I feel infrastructure does play a part there.
So, can Indian deep tech, this is the next point which I wanted to ask you about,
Hmm.
startup scale manufacturing and deployment before, let's say, global competitors outpace them? Or will timing remain the Achilles heel, Sanjana?
Hmm. Um, I feel when you look at, or let's say when you ask me a global competition in terms of uh, uh, deeper technologies, I feel it very much differs from technology to technology. So,
Mm-hmm.
deep tech is an umbrella term that we use for so many technologies that are emerging right now. But we can't generalize the competition for all. So when you look at, let's say, semiconductors, they've been at the core of any technology for like decades now. And that's something that a lot of countries are already very much advanced in. You look at
Fair.
Taiwan, you look at the US, and they're already way ahead. They're building, a 3 nanometer, 4 nanometer, or even 1.5 nanometer chips now, when
Mm-hmm.
India is still waiting for its fabrication in Dollara to set up so it can begin producing 28 nanometer,
But it
which
is
I
still an
wouldn't.
encouraging start, though, Sanjana. It
Yes,
has
so which I wouldn't
started,
say
it's
is a
encouraging, yes.
backdraw. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's not a backdraw, but it's something to start with.
Sure.
But on the other hand, if you look at technologies like quantum, robotics, or even space tech, are something that, let's say, for example, quantum, nobody has achieved quantum advantage as of yet. So,
Yep.
whoever achieves it wins the game. You can say it like that. So, there's a lot of technologies within deep tech that at the moment stand at that border of who can do the better
Crack it.
R&D, or who can provide the
Hmm.
better funding, and who can crack it first. So quantum remains one of them, robotics remains the other, humanoids, and even space, for example. uh, you know
But
uh,
space tech, of course,
yeah,
is zooming ahead. It's at its great liftoff, which which
definitely.
which I would like to follow up something with, so that maybe you could share that with the entire audience, Sanjana. Which is that space tech is a flag bearer at this given point in time in India. There are a lot of companies which have been around for a way longer time than the newer ones which are coming in. So, do you believe that those companies need to maybe carry the torch for the VCs and the government
Hmm.
policymakers to start to feel a lot more attracted towards the sector, so that the newer ones coming in, the newer startups coming in, face an easier road? That's point one. And the other one, very quickly, I want to allude to is, how do you feel about India being very reactive in its research methodology? For example, an Operation Sindoor takes place,
Mhm.
and then we suddenly require all of the missiles, all of the technology coming in immediately, vis-a-vis an America which has been doing this parallelly for the longest amount of time and does not believe in the reactive methodology. So when you
Right.
talked about space tech, deep and defense tech, etc., so I just thought you could also include these when you give us the understanding.
Right. So when you look at sort of, these old startups leading the way and, being the torchbearer for the upcoming startups,
Hmm.
that's definitely something I feel, makes an impact because, for sure, the older startups have gone through, more of a funding,
Sure.
crisis, or you can say a lot of them, go through initial hurdles that I come across when I talk to a lot of them. So I feel that's something that's definitely, you learn from experience. And we have great space tech startups in India. We have Agnikul, we have Skyroot, and they're competing with the likes of, SpaceX in the world. And when is it going to be the time, for them to take charge and, let ISRO
Nice.
be there, but, bring in that sort of the curve to take it to the private part. So that's something that I feel that is essential and that's really good, and I see a lot of startups sort of forming alliances to help newer startups go ahead. So I would say that is definitely good for your first point. And for your second question you asked regarding the reactiveness of the
Yes.
country, I would feel that I see that pattern somewhere, but definitely, when you compare it to countries like the US, they have their system set and, they feel
Hmm.
that, okay, even though there's no war right now, but we need to be prepared for this.
Hmm.
I feel in India that needs to begin with a good public-private collaboration. And, everybody that I talk to
Hmm.
talks about, we're doing public-private collaboration. But when I say public-private collaboration, I mean actual awareness, for the
Hmm.
government organizations and just the industry to be aware that, okay, for example, you said Operation Sindoor. So the
Yep.
public organizations to be aware, okay, so and so drone startups are there in India, and this is what they're building. So to have that relationship with them before that, okay, if something does happen, this is how we're gonna play it out. And then once the operation is over, then it wouldn't feel like a load as of instantly that
Hmm.
oh, now we need 5 missiles. It's not going to be like that. When you have good collaboration with the private industry, it doesn't work like that. So I feel the journey will be a lot smoother when we look at actual aware partnerships versus just partnerships in the namesake.
Fair enough. Finally, Sanjana, the final question, which is, are we
Mhm.
building technologies that global markets will adopt, or ones that survive mainly on domestic policy support? And of course, your prediction for the year 2026 and beyond.
Right. I feel any startup building in India is not definitely confined to just the Indian environment. They're building out of India with, I would say, advantages like, being cost efficient and,
Hmm.
considering India is a very cost efficient market, or like, let's say, cost sensitive market to an extent.
Hmm.
So they do have advantages like that. But definitely all startups and even any enterprises building in India are building for the world. So I wouldn't say they're restricted by just domestic, technologies or funding. A lot of what they build, they, import raw materials and stuff out of different countries. And I wouldn't say to any extent you can talk about skipping the geopolitics when you talk about,
Sure.
any sort of industry. So geopolitics do come in the play. And I would say we should rather be on the path to, the self-indigenousness that we talk
Hmm.
about recently.
Hmm.
um, and definitely that does start with global partnership. But to an extent, I think that self-sustained ecosystem does really help. And you can see that in cases of countries like China, for example. They're doing great. They have like humanoids at airports, at
Yep.
country borders, and they're doing really good in terms of deeper technologies, and as well as being like an exporter out in the world, but at the
Hmm.
same time remaining like closed off in terms of their technology. So I feel like that's something where we need to start. But nevertheless, I would say that we are doing pretty good for a country that has started out like a few years ago.
Fabulous. All right. Well,
Right.
Sanjana, that has been, as always, a fabulous, intriguing, enthralling conversation with you. And of course, wishing you and everyone in your family a very, very happy new year.
Thank you
And
so
really
much. Same to
wishing,
you.
yeah, of course, and really wishing in totality that your predictions come true, that we have a lot more funding flowing
Yeah,
into deep tech in the year 2026 and then beyond. Of course,
definitely.
ladies and gentlemen, that was Sanjana Gupta, our tech journalist. And finally, I believe post that conversation, I just have to say this. The context was set very brilliantly by her. We, of course, are relatively new to the game, but I believe that we are going in the right direction. Space tech, defense tech is doing fabulously well. I believe a lot of the startups who have been there for a while are setting examples, hopefully, for the policymakers, for the VCs to get attracted towards this ecosystem. And more importantly, and finally, what matters is the fact that new areas need to be funded. Robotics, as Sanjana mentioned. Of course, great initiative as far as Quantum Valley is concerned. And of course, so many others. But in finality, on front page, we'd like to say this, that the path is correct. And I believe we have only a few who are bearing the torch. We need a lot more to join as far as the procession goes into 2026 and beyond. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, think AI, think deep tech, think India, think AIM.